Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Game one of the NBA Finals is over and done with, and the Celtics came out the victors in Golden State, giving the Warriors their first loss at home this postseason, winning by a score of 120-108. But this game was all about the fourth quarter, Sap, and the Celtics rallying from a big third quarter deficit and outscoring the Warriors in that fourth quarter 40-16 to come away with the game one victory and take home court advantage away from Golden State. So obviously I am very happy today, but Sap, as more of a neutral observer, let's hear your thoughts about the game.
I'm not a neutral observer, Jet. I think you've been reading me wrong the last several months. At the beginning of the playoffs, I was very confident that the Celtics were going to win the championship. And through every round, I rooted for them, right? Because I don't want to see Kevin Durant win a third title. So
it's hard for me to hear that, Sap. I'm just like, I have so many years of you rooting for LeBron against the Celtics. It's like I'm programmed to think that you're not rooting for the Celtics.
Well, LeBron's out of it, so I can't root for my guy. Maybe next year he'll be back in the finals where he rightly deserves to be every year. But I didn't want to see Kevin Durant win another title because the crazy people who want to put Durant up there with LeBron would have a little bit more ammunition. Then they're taking on the Milwaukee Bucks, the Celtics are, and I love Giannis. And I think he's the best player in the world, but I don't need him to get a second title right away because then they'll start saying he's better than LeBron historically, which again is foolish. And then when we get to the Miami Heat, I'm like, well, Miami hasn't really done much since LeBron left. They did make it to the finals 2 years ago, and then LeBron beat them in the bubble. So I'm like, they really haven't been a big factor since LeBron left in 2014. And now the Celtics are playing Golden State. And the last thing I want is Steph Curry winning a fourth title to equal LeBron. And hear even crazier people say, well, he's the best player of his generation, which apparently they don't think that LeBron and Steph are in the same generation, although they are. So, yeah, I'm rooting for the Celtics, and I like this team, and I want to see you win another championship. I have no problem with that. I've been rooting for them throughout the playoffs. Last night, down 12, I'm like, should I stick with this? It's the NBA. 12-point deficit with 12 minutes left is very, very makeable to come back. And they certainly did that and ended up winning by 12. Jet, I don't know if I've ever seen a game where one team won the third quarter 38-24 and the other team wins the fourth quarter 40-16. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. You're going to see that more often in the future because of the three-point shot, right? I mean, the Celtics were just brilliant from beyond the arc in the fourth quarter, going 9 of 12 on threes. And they turned a 15-point deficit into ultimately a 15-point lead in about 12 minutes. Like, you could have made a sandwich, made a pot of coffee, have a little dessert, and in that time, a 15-point deficit turned into a 15-point lead. It was shocking because you don't normally see teams do that against Golden State, but this team plays great defense, the Celtics do, and they also are so good from the three that they just evaporated the Golden State Warriors in game one.
Yeah, I think, Sep, I was tweeting this out during the game, and this was my thoughts, going into the game and this series, is that we've talked about this plenty, Sap, that Golden State is at their best when they're front running. And when they get a lead, they can really pile on that lead. And then they're celebrating on the bench. Steph Curry is, doing dances on the court and stuff like that. So you can't allow that to happen. You have to stay as connected as possible with them. And when Golden State is rolling and they get that thing snowballing on you, you really don't have much of a chance. But as long as you keep it reasonable and keep it within striking distance, I think that you saw exactly what happened is that Golden State can melt down in the fourth quarter, and that when things tighten up, they're not as good. So they're a team that loves playing from ahead, and that if they can start feeling it and they go up by, they can go up by quickly 20, 30 points, you got to keep it reasonable. And the Celtics, though they were outscored, like you said, in the third quarter, 38-24, they kept it close enough that they felt like they had a chance in the fourth quarter. And when they started chipping away into that lead and making it really close, Golden State really lost their composure, because that's not where they're comfortable at, is in close games down the stretch. They're comfortable pulling away in the second and third quarters and then coasting to the end. And the Celtics didn't allow them to do that. Another reason, Sap, I think that is sort of the blueprint for the Celtics in this series, is that why Golden State is so good at scoring in bunches and getting up is because you just look at what they do offensively, which is set countless screens at the perimeter to free up Steph, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, whoever. They're setting screen after screen after screen, and the guys are running off them, and they do the best job of any team in the league of setting those screens at the perimeter and running off the screens. But by the time the fourth quarter comes around, fatigue comes into play. So if you're close enough to them, their three-point shooting is not going to be as effective in the fourth quarter. Their legs aren't going to be as fresh in the fourth quarter. And those looks that they were getting off the screens in the first and second quarter where they were, sprinting off of a screen, they're not going to be able to do that as much in the fourth quarter. Just natural human physiology, you're going to be more tired. And I think that fatigue set into the Warriors. And so the offense that was firing on all cylinders in the third quarter, and you saw Steph in the first quarter put up a virtuoso 21 points in that quarter. Those legs get tired, and it's a little bit harder to sprint off that screen and get a wide open look when it comes down to the fourth quarter. And so if you keep it close and then the Warriors get tired in the fourth, their offense is not going to be the same as it was early in the game. And I think the Celtics were able to recognize that and take advantage of that to win the game.
I'm not going to be the person that says that Steph needs more help because, he, I think, gets lauded more than any other superstar. He very rarely, if ever, gets criticized. I mean, LeBron gets criticized, Durant gets criticized, everybody gets criticized. Steph Curry is kind of almost has like a Derek Jeter feel to him, like he can do no wrong. Derek Jeter was a guy who played about the same. Yeah, I mean, the guy in the postseason who played like he did in the regular season, which is good. He's not a guy that elevates in the postseason compared to, say, Durant or LeBron or certainly Michael Jordan. Those guys elevated in the postseason. Steph is what he is, and he's a great player. But I think that you look at what he has around him at this point, certainly doesn't have Kevin Durant, and I can detail some of the numbers, what Steph is in the finals with and without Kevin Durant. Klay Thompson looks like a shell of himself on both ends of the court. Like, he can't get by anybody, and he's normally been a catch and shoot guy, and that's all well and good, but he's still got to be able to get open. He doesn't get as open as easily as he's done in the past. Jordan Poole is going to be rendered nearly useless in this series because he can't cover anyone. I think Brian Scalabrine on NBC Sports Boston detailed that, saying he may not even be useful in this series because the Celtics will hunt him out and score on him at every turn. And then you look at someone like Draymond Green, a player we both like. He was 2 of 12 from the floor. It's never a good thing if you're Golden State and you have Draymond Green taking 12 shots. That's about 8 or 9 too many. That's not his forte. So I think a lot falls on Steph. And like you said, he was just incredible in that first quarter. The Celtics, it was almost like culture shock. Like, we've never seen a guy like this before. I mean, we played against Milwaukee, which struggled from 3. We played against Miami, which struggled from 3. And here's this dude who can hit from 28, 30 feet with regularity over the final 3 quarters. He scored 21 in the first quarter, 13 over the next 3 quarters. So they did a good job with him. And I think fatigue has a lot to do with that. But again, Steph in the finals, that was his 29th game last night in his career in the NBA Finals. He's 9-1 when Kevin Durant is his teammate. He's 8-11 without Kevin Durant. So, do we want to get into this debate of, is it Steph? Is it KD? Who was more important? Kind of like the age-old debate of Brady versus Belichick. And I think we can agree that Brady's kind of won that debate. I think that Durant's kind of won the debate with Steph. Unless Steph wins this title, then they'll have 2 without Kevin Durant. They were unstoppable with Kevin Durant. They're not unstoppable without him. That's a huge difference. And a lot falls on a 6'2" guy who's great, a top 15, top 20 player of all time. But I am rooting so heavily for the Celtics because I have to push back when people say that he's in the GOAT discussion, he belongs on Mount Rushmore, that he's a better point guard than Magic Johnson, that he's right there with Jordan and LeBron. Please, no. He's impacted the game greatly. And as we talked about in the last podcast, I think the game kind of came to him a little bit as well. I mean, yes, he's kind of changed the game, but the game was heading in that direction before Steph Curry joined the league. And he's just the best at what he does as a shooter. But, you can go back and forth and say that Dame Lillard is someone who's, a slightly inferior version of Steph Curry, but not that far behind Steph Curry, right? Curry's a 42% three-point shooter in his career. Dame Lillard about 38, 39%. It can also hit the logo 3. And again, this is a discussion for another day. We're in the middle of the NBA Finals, and I don't want to go there. But my point being that everybody that was so frightened of Golden State, namely Celtic fans, got to see last night that they're a really good team, Golden State, but quite frankly, Jet, the Celtics are a better team. They're better on the defensive end. They can hold their own on the offensive end. They're more physical, and they have more options. And you could have Jason Tatum have a 3 for 17 night and still win the game because he goes out and gets 13 assists. Now, those assists are dependent on guys hitting shots, and man, did they ever hit shots in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics ultimately shot 51% from three last night, Sap, which, is fantastic. The Warriors, to their credit, shot 42% from three. It's not like they were stiffs from three. Mostly that was, Steph Curry's doing. But yeah, the Celtics shot really well, and Tatum was really poor from the floor last night, but found a way to contribute, which is something that you've alluded to with the late great Kobe Bryant, that in Game 7 of the last championship he won against the Celtics, he was not good shooting, but he was able to find a way to rebound the basketball effectively and contribute to them winning that game. So Tatum, I think, deserves credit for being, his passing is just so much improved. He's such a much better playmaker than he was entering the season. But overall, he didn't have a good game last night. I mean, the guys who were the big three for the Celtics last night were Al Horford, Jalen Brown, and Derek White. I mean, not necessarily the guys that you thought were going to be in that conversation, but they stepped up. The Celtics role players stepped up when they needed them to step up. And Derek White played, I think, his best game as a Celtic. He was phenomenal last night. Al Horford looked so ecstatic to be in the finals last night, and he played his ass off. He was great. And Jalen Brown struggled a little bit early, but in the fourth quarter took over the basketball game and deserves a lot of credit for when, it became winning time. He was the guy that the Celtics were looking to carry them over the finish line. And he had a phenomenal fourth quarter.
He got them back in the game, right? He didn't hit the threes like Derek White or Al Horford or Peyton Pritchard or Marcus Smart late. But he's the guy who got them back in it when it was a 12-point deficit heading into the fourth quarter. He just took the game over for 3 or 4 possessions and got you within shouting distance. And then the three started raining from there. He played with a lot of force, which I think is something that Jason Tatum's going to have to do. Tatum was a little passive last night. I think he can still be nearly unstoppable getting to the rim. Golden State doesn't have a natural rim protector. We know Draymond's going to play really good defense. Looney had a nice game rebounding, but Draymond and Looney aren't going to give you much on offense. If they're on the court together, it almost feels like you're playing 3-on-5 for Golden State. But I think Tatum will have more force in his next game. Look, Tatum's had 3 games in the postseason, Jet. Game 3 against Milwaukee, Game 3 against Miami, and last night's game against Golden State, where he shot a grand total of 10 for 50 in those 3 games. And the interesting thing is you won one of them last night, and you were right in those other 2 games. Remember, they lost by 2 to Milwaukee back in Game 3 when he had a horrible shooting game of 4 for 19. Then Game 3 against Miami was 3 for 17 again, or 3 for 14, and they only lost by 6. So they can be competitive, even win with him having an off night. Yeah, I don't see Golden State doing that if Steph Curry goes 4 for 19, which he probably won't. But I mean, the point being, the Celtics, they have other options besides Jason Tatum. You don't want to see him have these types of games. It seems like he has 1 per series, so he got it out of his way last night. I expect him to be better in Game 2.
Yeah, they have a knack for their secondary scores and their role players stepping up when Tatum doesn't play particularly well on the offensive side. And you saw that last night too. And even guys like, Rob Williams, who's obviously not 100%. I thought he did a really good job in his 24 minutes out there. 8 points and 6 rebounds, but 4 blocks. And I thought after he got burned a couple times by Steph Curry, I think he realized how to play him. And the Celtics figured it out. It's like, you can live with Steph Curry taking 2s. He's going to hit them. That's fine. But you can't live with him bombing away from 3 and hitting all those, because it adds up and you end up getting blown out. So if you run him off the 3-point line, let him take those floaters. He's deadly with those 2. He'll hit them too. But you live with that as opposed to the 3s. And then I thought Peyton Pritchard played a really good game for them too last night, Seth. 16 minutes, 8 points, but 6 rebounds. They needed those rebounds last night. They did.
They sure did, because Golden State was getting opportunity after opportunity, second and third shots, and it wasn't necessarily where they'd get an offensive rebound and it would be a putback, but then they'd kick it out to Steph early and he'd hit a 3, or Thompson would hit a 3, or someone would hit a 3. Otto Porter had a pretty nice game, right? He hit 4 threes in the game. Iguodala even got on the board with a 3. So they were really hurting the Celtics getting offensive rebounds. And part of that is because Golden State's offense stretches you out so much, right? Because you have Steph Curry who can hit from 32 feet. So you're cognizant of trying to cover him, and now you're switching. And sometimes he breaks down your defense so much, even when he's not shooting and hitting, it kind of causes chaos out there that someone misses a shot, and next thing you know, Golden State gets the rebound because defensively, you're kind of out of sorts. So you got to be little bit more disciplined with that. Yeah, Peyton Pritchard did a nice job. Fresh set of legs in the fourth quarter to, again, he's not shutting Steph Curry down. No one believes that, but a fresh set of legs that, he can get out there and play. You got contributions from him. Look, Derek White was right there with Al Horford is probably your best player. I thought Jalen Brown was your most important player, though, because early in the fourth, when it was a 12-point game, he got you closer and closer and closer. If he doesn't have that stretch there early in the fourth quarter, you're not making a comeback in that game. So, again, total team effort. But, yeah, your guy Pritchard, your fellow Oregon Duck, very, very good performance last night.
Yeah, Jalen Brown, listen, he didn't shoot well from 3, 2 of 8, but his mid-range game was awesome last night. And he's a tremendous mid-range game. And when he doesn't go to that, it's sort of frustrating because those are free points for him. He is not a great dribbler. We know that, but he's strong and athletic. So if he just gets inside that 3-point line and he's shooting above anybody because he can just rise and fire. And so I'm hoping that he just, as he continues to progress throughout the series in his career, that he realizes he doesn't have to make his money from driving to the basket every time and losing the ball or shooting threes. That mid-range is available for him essentially whenever the hell he wants it. And last night, they were so focused on Jason Tatum, the Warriors, that they let Jalen Brown had so much room to operate. So that mid-range game should be there for him all series long. And from what we've seen him in this postseason, he knocks that down with regularity. I mean, that is his bread and butter shot. He has no problem knocking down from 15, 16, 17 feet. And you can't give that to him. And he can also create it no problem because, like I said, he's so athletic. He can just turn, fall, and fire, and he's going to be able to shoot over anybody.
His offensive game should model Kawhi Leonard's offensive game. Kawhi's a good three-point shooter. He can get really hot from three-point land. If anybody remembers Kawhi Leonard, because he didn't play all of last year, and he's missed several years along the way. But when he does show up and play, he's one of the 5 or 6 best players in the world without question. But his mid-range game is electric, and that's again where Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant lived. Kevin Durant lives everywhere, right? 3 at the rim, sure. Mid-range. I mean, he's the most unstoppable offensive force we've ever seen. The mid-range is also, it's tough for LeBron because, again, he's just so freaking big and strong that when he starts to drive to the basket, he can't just pull up and rise over people like Jalen Brown because LeBron's just too freaking big. I mean, that's the one part of his offensive game I don't think he's ever been able to develop because it's just physically nearly impossible. Jalen Brown, model your game after Kawhi Leonard. You're kind of his size. Actually a little bulkier and stronger than Kawhi. Well, Kawhi is very wiry strong, but kind of model your game after that. There's nothing wrong with shooting.
Or somebody we just saw, Sap, Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler. Yeah. And Jimmy Butler, who kind of goes at his own speed. Like Jimmy Butler reminds me a little bit of Luka Doncic in the mid-range. It's almost like, where's he going? Where's he going? He looks like he should be able to be stopped. And next thing you know, the ball's in the bucket, right? Jimmy Buckets. But he's actually, Jalen Brown's more explosive than those guys. But again, he's not a really good ball handler. Butler and Luka are better ball handlers than Jalen Brown. But work on that mid-range and just exploit those defenses that allow you to do that because those opportunities are going to be there. One more thing I just wanted to touch on, Jet, from last night. What happened in the fourth quarter is the Celtics were making all their shots, so that allowed them to set up their defense better. I mean, if you're missing shots, that allows Golden State to get into transition. Look, they even get in transition off of makes, but by the fourth quarter, as you said, they're fatigued. But when you put 40 points on the board, that's going to help your defense so much. And you held Golden State to 16 points in the fourth quarter. So offense late to defense as much as anything else. They were just so damn efficient in the fourth quarter that Golden State was kind of out of sorts on offense. So that was a big part of it. But just overall, just a sensational win. I mean, really. And again, I said it before the series, and I feel even more so after game one. They are the better team. I think they're going to win this thing. Will they win it? I have a tendency of being wrong a lot. Hopefully I'm not. They're a better team than Golden State. There's no question in my mind they are. I mean, especially when you look at the other 2 components of the big 3. Klay Thompson, again, is not the Klay Thompson of 3-4 years ago. He may never be that guy again. When you blow out your knee and you blow out your Achilles in back-to-back years, that's tough to come back from. And Draymond Green, again, if you're looking for him to take 12 shots in a game, that ain't going to work. That's not his role. So I do think the Celtics are the better team, but again, they still got to win 3 more games here.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't say this series is over I mean, it's just one game, and Golden State has lost the first game in a finals before and won. So it's not like it's completely
I don't think
foreign
they
territory
did
to them.
I don't think they did.
I thought they had.
No,
maybe I'm incorrect.
Under Steve Kerr. See, I just love pushing back against Golden State because we both believe they're such front runners, right? Like, I mean, I do give them credit. They did come back from 3 games to 1 down against Oklahoma City back in 2016 in the Western Conference Finals. That was as much Oklahoma City with Russ Westbrook and Durant shitting their pants in that series as much as Golden State coming from behind. But I think in that series, that was the Western Conference Finals. Oklahoma City won game 1, and then Golden State come back to win that series. They lost game 1 to Toronto in the finals 3 years ago, but Toronto won that series against Cleveland and LeBron. They always won game 1.
So maybe I'm incorrect then.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, so don't even give them that credit that they can come back from a 1-0 deficit in the finals. They're cooked. It's over with.
No, I don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear that. I'm not jinxing it yet. But listen,
I'm a green teamer.
I like it, Sap. But for early returns certainly good. Talking about what happened in the post game, Sap. I don't know if you listened to Draymond Green's comments at all. He's of the opinion that. He didn't say it exactly, but that the Celtics got lucky, and he was, saying, Marcus Smart shot 4 of 7 from 3, Derek White 5 of 8 from 3, Al Horford 6 of 8 from 3. He's like, is that going to happen again? No. And so basically, he said we dominated the game for 41 of the minutes, and then we ended up losing at the end. Well, I think that's you could push back on that in multiple ways. One, the Celtics had the lead at halftime. So right. I don't know how you can say that. And 2, the Warriors, they had a great third quarter, but to say 41 minutes, Sap, I mean, where the hell is he pulling that out of his ass?
Well, I like Draymond's math because Draymond, when he talked about Horford, White, and Marcus Smart, he went through the numbers really quick. I was impressed with that. He said 15 for 23, did the math on the fly, which is, 63% from 3 from those 3 players. Will they do it again? Not in the same game, but they're quite capable of doing it one more time each in some game, right? But is Jason Tatum going to go 1 for 5 from 3 and Jalen Brown going to go 2 for 8 from 3?
Right. That's the thing that he omitted.
Right. So Boston's 2 best players didn't shoot the ball well last night from beyond the arc, but 3 other guys did. And look, Horford's had these games. Horford seems to have one game in a series where you're like, holy crap, this guy is a Hall of Famer. And Derek White's playing at a very high level since the birth of his son. Maybe fatherhood has just agreed with him. And Smart shot the ball well last night. And Pritchard hit
Horford's been damn close to a 50% 3-point shooter this playoff. It's
crazy.
So that's really, last night wasn't an anomaly. Those were also, again, wide open.
Right. And back to with Draymond Green talking about 41 minutes. Look, the first half was a toss-up, right? I mean, it felt like Golden State was in control, but the scoreboard said Celtics up by 2 at the half. So let's take that 24 minutes and kind of put it aside. So it came down to a 24-minute game. Yes, Golden State controlled the third quarter, 38-24, but then the Celtics controlled the fourth quarter, 40-16. The Celtics quarter was better than Golden State's quarter of dominance, and that's why they won the game by 12. The other thing with Draymond Green, and we both love Draymond Green, he's going to be fantastic when he retires on TV. I love the guy. I love his podcast. I think he does great work. Although I push back when he keeps talking about, if you don't know basketball, if you didn't play it, you shouldn't talk about, well, you know what, if you're not, broadcast journalism major, then you shouldn't be able to have a podcast. I mean,
that's
I'm not going to go
idiotic.
there. It's silly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Kevin Durant, and I know we're going to talk about this later, responding to Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, and
he's got nothing better to do right now.
He's got nothing better to do. I'm convinced Kevin Durant just sits at home all day like an old guy, a retiree, and just watches these shows, tweets, maybe goes, plays basketball for a couple hours, comes back and watches more shows and tweets. But Draymond sounded more like an analyst than a player after the game last night. Draymond, you were on the court. A lot of these 3-point shots were wide open. I mean, there were some of Al Horford's threes where he got the pass, could check the laces, look at the signature on the ball, set it up, and have a wide open 3. Maybe you should defend a little bit better, and these guys wouldn't go 15 for 23. One of the threes that Derek White made, which I thought was maybe the biggest basket of the game because it tied it up, midway through the fourth quarter was that contested three about 28 feet away on the far side. That was gorgeous. I mean, that was a huge shot. They did contest that, but a lot of those threes were wide open. Draymond, your team did not play good defense. So look in the mirror a little bit more than worrying so much about is Marcus Smart, Derek White, Al Horford. They're going to shoot the same going forward.
Yeah, and again, that 41 minutes is just nonsensical. How can you have dominated for 41 minutes if you didn't even have the lead at halftime? That makes no sense. And as great as Steph Curry was in that first quarter, and it was an all-time finals quarter. I mean, statistically, it was one of the great quarters in finals history from a scoring standpoint. He had 21 points. He did not have a good he didn't score the second quarter, and then he sort of disappeared in the second half.
Yeah, he only had 13 points after the first quarter, right? I think he was 5 of 16 from the floor after the first quarter, 1 for 7 from 3.
So was it an adjustment that the Celtics made, or was it just him not being assertive? What was the difference there?
Well, I think part of it defensively, they were shocked by him in the first quarter. It's like, holy crap, this isn't Kyle Lowry, or this isn't Drew Holiday. I mean, this guy, you can't give him any space from 35 feet in.
He had two threes, Sep, that were wide open. No one was within 15 feet of him. When does he ever see that?
Yeah, it's like playing zone defense against Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers with no pass rush. Like, are you surprised that those guys are going to complete passes? Well, Steph Curry's going to hit threes, contested threes, let alone wide open threes. I think they just got more aggressive and try to push him out a little bit more and kind of fight through screens. Or if they were going to switch, the bigs were more aggressive. And we saw that with Rob Williams blocking a three, which just, I mean, is spectacular. I mean, that guy's defensive IQ is through the roof. I mean, because he knows how to block shots with the offhand. He controls the blocks. And then
that's like his sixth block three of the playoffs. It's ridiculous. Who blocks threes? And he does it regularly.
And he does it while he's under the basket, and then he comes out and blocks threes. Like, I remember, like, I'm so old that I saw Patrick Ewing play in high school, because actually we graduated the same year. Me at Somerville High School, him at Cambridge Ridge and Latin. I was broadcasting the games then. I wasn't playing against Patrick Ewing.
Right.
I'm not going to come up with any kind of crazy stories. Ewing used to do that in high school. Like, he'd contest perimeter shots. We didn't even have threes back then, but he would contest perimeter shots. In fact, to the point where he was so good in high school. And again, 6'11", future Hall of Famer playing in high school 40 years ago against 6'2" centers. Obviously, he was going to be dominant. But teams would practice getting ready for Cambridge Ridge and Latin, shooting over brooms. Like, that's how they got ready to try to shoot over him. Well, Robert Williams is doing that in the NBA right now, and he's only 6'8", 6'9". He's just so long, and his timing is great. Look, I think if he had played the full season, didn't get hurt late, he may have been right there with Marcus Smart as Defensive Player of the Year. In fact, when we gave out our awards at the end of the season, I thought he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. But it's not bad when you have two guys that are worthy of being Defensive Player of the Year, and you have four other guys that get votes for all defensive NBA teams. So that's how good their defense is. But yeah, he's a special player. But yeah, so they were just getting more aggressive with Steph Curry. And again, I think the fatigue factor is there. I mean, Steph Curry's constantly running. I mean, I'm tired watching him play. Again, 34 years old. And, if you can get physical with him, and kudos to the officials, they let these teams play. There were only 29 fouls called last night in game 1. Compare that to game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals between Miami and Boston, where there were 55 fouls called.
No one wants to see that.
No, I mean, I know you like muck it up basketball. And
but I like muck it up and let them play. Let them muck
play.
It up and blow the whistle every 2 seconds. Then the game takes 4 hours to play.
That was aesthetically a very pleasing game to watch, right? There were no.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Was it block charge? There weren't a lot of
great ball movement.
Not much arguing, ball movement. I mean, look, Golden State is aesthetically the most pleasing team to watch play. They really are. I mean, it's like soccer when Brazil was at its best, the beautiful game. That's what Golden State brings you with Curry and all that ball movement. But it was aesthetically a very good game to watch. But I just think they were much more aggressive on Curry because, again, I think it's culture shock, right? He's a unicorn. Like, how do you prepare for that guy?
Yeah, and it was their first game ever of the finals, so that, the bright lights too. I think you heard it, Sap, and the Marcus Smart was mic'd up. And you heard it after the first quarter he said, this isn't Miami. We have to meet them, at the half court. We can't drop back. He said, we can't drop back in defense. We have to meet them. He's 100% right. I mean, he has a very high basketball IQ, especially on the defensive end.
Absolutely.
So obviously he knows what he's talking about. But he said this isn't Miami. They're a very different team than Miami. They're not physical like Miami is, and they are bombing away from three. And Miami was obviously not a very proficient 3-point shooting team in their series against the Celtics. Though in the regular season they were a great 3-point shooting team, but it's obviously it's two different types of games. But the Celtics. And this was a constant story throughout this game. They adjusted really well. When they had to adjust, they adjusted. And that's what they ended up getting a win because they were able to continue to adjust on the fly, tinker, keep it close enough, make their run in the fourth, win the game.
Yeah, just hang in there. Just hang in there. Make it a 6 or an 8-minute game, and I like your chances because Golden State's not used to playing in those games. As much as other teams. The Celtics are comfortable in any situation, right? Low scoring game, a lot of foul calls. They can kind of plow through that. Or if it gets into a game of skill, they can win that type of game as well. That's why I think they're the best team in basketball because they can beat you multiple ways. And again, this is far from being over right now because you've got a big game 2 coming up on Sunday night, which if the Celtics win that, now you're in complete control. But, it's going to be a tough one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift gears, Sap, to a former teammate of Steph Curry's and Draymond Green's, who you alluded to a couple minutes ago. Kevin Durant. He's watching the finals from home. He's been at home for a while now, and he's been there before. But I think he's pretty restless, and so he was watching Stephen A. Smith on one of the 30 shows that Stephen A. does. I don't know if it was First Take or Get Up or Inside. I don't know. Stephen A. literally works like 20 shows. I can't keep track of it. But Stephen A. was
on a soap opera as well. Isn't Stephen A. been on a soap opera?
I don't know, Sap. He
All
does.
My
He's
Children or
credit to him. He is a really hardworking dude.
He
is a really hardworking guy. But I do think it was All My Children. By the way,
I'm not kidding. I think I
know.
know.
No, you're not. I know you're not kidding. He was. Was he playing himself or was he playing?
I think he's kind of typecast at this point. He's not Denzel Washington or Daniel Day-Lewis. You're going to see him on TV or on the big screen. You're going to know it's Stephen A. Smith.
So he was saying the other day, he was talking about Steph Curry and saying how he thought that he pushed back on people saying Steph Curry changed the game for the worse and said actually it was Michael Jordan who changed the game for the worse because it put more of the emphasis on individuals, less on team basketball. That's not the point. We can debate that for another day if we so choose. But what it was, why it became a much bigger thing than just a random segment on a Wednesday, was that Kevin Durant was watching and then he tweeted, "My theory is that guys like Steve, Skip, and Shannon have changed the game for the worse. Players like Steph and Michael can only push the game forward." So basically taking shots at, some of the main sports provocateurs, both on ESPN and on Fox Sports. Obviously, there are a lot more he could have named, but we know Kevin Durant is no fan of the media, Sap. And so this doesn't come as a surprise. He's also somebody who likes to tweet out his grievances. So that doesn't come as a surprise. What were your thoughts on this latest Kevin Durant social media beef?
Well, his pushback to the media may explain why he's only won 1 MVP, right? I think LeBron
possibly
understands. Maybe LeBron understands, coddle the media a little bit more, although he should have more than 4 MVPs. But I think, and I'm not kidding, I swear, I think Kevin Durant gets up early, watches the Fox Sports 1 shows, ESPN shows, and then goes plays basketball or, works out or wherever he does, and then comes back and watches more and tweets and then gets ready to watch the game. He's like an old man, like a retiree, just sitting around watching TV all day. Maybe needs a hobby like golf or something to occupy his time or do whatever. I think what happened here is in Stephen A's part about being Jordan is that Jordan made it such a marketing monster that it became about the individual over the team. And he talked about Bird and Magic, who elevated the game when they first entered the league, but it was more about team. Although I will guarantee you when the Lakers played the Celtics in the finals, it was Larry Bird and the Celtics against Magic Johnson and the Lakers, because they were the 2 best players. They were the forces of nature that carried those franchises along. Jordan took it to another level. So I get what Stephen A is saying. It was a nuanced opinion. This is Kevin Durant, though. I mean, he's just constantly, he's got to be the most thin-skinned superstar we've ever seen. Aaron Rodgers is probably a pretty close second, but he doesn't get into it this much. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers.
Well,
doesn't sit
Aaron
around and
Rodgers isn't
watch this
super
stuff.
active on social media, right?
No, and I don't, and I think he is like doing other things like golfing or hanging out in Hawaii with Miles Teller, or I don't know what he's doing. He's got a lot more interest than Durant. Durant's interest seemed to be basketball, right? I mean, he's like a basketball nerd. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is sitting around, watching the NFL Network all day and pontificating about what those guys are saying. He's got other interests. I mean, we did have to hear about how, he likes to read Ayn Rand, and he had to have that book prominent when he was on with the Manning cast. So, he pushes that in our face. Whereas Durant isn't that guy. He just loves basketball, and he's pushed back against these guys. And, look, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Skip Bayless, this helps the NBA. I mean, these shows talk incessantly about the NBA. I mean, look,
sure, it's all Skip and Shannon do.
That's all they do, and it devolves.
It's one segment. It's just LeBron and Jordan.
LeBron and Jordan. Still, every single segment is about those two guys, or the Dallas Cowboys, or Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Maybe that's why I like watching that show, because they're always talking about my guys. So, but this helps the sport. I mean, this is just free publicity that you get from networks that draw, a lot of eyeballs. I mean, the ESPN shows get about 1 million people a day to watch them, and the Fox Sports 1 shows get about 500,000.
Yeah, and then the YouTube and Twitter is where it really blows up.
Huge.
That's where you're getting way more people.
Right. And then look, the Sports Hub and EEI use a lot of opinions from Colin Cowherd or Skip Bayless or Nick Wright, and they throw them on as a rejoiner. We used to do that at the Herald. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what Colin Cowherd said today. Let's react. It's great for sports talk radio. I remember Chris Villani often said to me, he goes, I think there's more people listening to Cowherd and Nick Wright on the local radio shows than actually on Fox Sports 1.
That
we're all
might be accurate.
Rejoiners. Yeah,
it honestly might be.
Shows there. Yeah, I mean, so how many times would we use that? So, but this is good for the sport. We're talking about it. I mean, the NFL is king, without question. I mean, it's in another stratosphere. I mean,
absolutely.
The draft outdraws NBA playoff games. So that's in a whole different category. But the NBA has great traction because of the superstars, because the personalities are so interesting. I mean, we've seen guys running around in tank tops and shorts. We see who they are. Football, you've got helmets, and hockey, you've got the shield and all that stuff. And baseball players tend to be,
boring.
Boring. Yeah. I mean, the best thing that happened to baseball this year is there was a brouhaha in a fantasy football league where Tommy Pham is, punching out or slapping Jock Peterson. That's like the biggest story of the year.
It is. It has been.
It really is. Oh God, yeah. And I'm sure Tommy Pham is now your favorite baseball player. He's got a certain edge to him. But was it a surprise? You got to
respect the rules of fantasy football.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of like when Kramer, set everybody off with the rules at the fantasy camp and got into a fight with Mickey Mantle.
Right.
But it's no surprise that Mike Trout was the commissioner of the league, right? I mean, that seems to be, par for the course. But I think when you look at all of what Durant is, this helps, the league, that there's so much talk about it, whether it be Stephen A. Smith or Skip or Shannon and all that stuff. And he's pushed back against Skip a lot, and Skip loves Kevin Durant. I mean, he loves Kevin Durant. Stephen A. Smith is constantly, it says he's the best player in the world. So I think just that Kevin Durant is so thin-skinned, he can't help himself. And again, I don't know what else he does. He doesn't appear to have, and look, I couldn't care less what he does. He seems like a pretty good guy in that you never hear anything about Kevin Durant with trouble or anything. I just think he sits around his house all day and watches these shows and reacts to them, kind of like an old guy. But maybe find some hobbies, or I don't know if he plans on having a family, whatever, just kind of get off of this stuff. If it's going to bother you that much. And again, don't bite the hand that feeds you. These are guys that voted you as MVP back in 2014. And I think he criticized the media after that. You don't know anything about basketball. Well, these are the same people that voted you as MVP. Like, what are you talking about here?
Well, I think Stephen A. Smith, he responded today, and I thought he made a good point saying, well, one, he said, we're not going anywhere, so you got to get used to it. It's once I retire, there'll be another Stephen A. Smith. He's right. Of course there will be. That's because those are the type of personalities that networks want to hire. They want people who are opinionated and say things that will go viral. They don't want somebody who's going to be boring. So he's right that Kevin Durant needs to get used to that, because that's how it is. And also, I thought he made another good point with saying that Kevin Durant just wants people to shut up, watch him play basketball, and just, say either how great he is or not offer anything, just let him play basketball. That's it. Go look at the box score, be done with it. But fans want more than that. That's just what Kevin Durant wants. That's not good for the league. That's not good for him selling sneakers or what he's got his hands in a lot of different businesses. So, Stephen A. Smith is saying, a lot of these guys reach out to me to help me, publicize some of their stuff. So, it goes both ways. But, I think he was dead on saying that in Durant's perfect world, he'd go out, he'd play in front of, the fans. Probably everybody would be silent. They clap when he does something well. They don't say anything when he does something wrong. And then after the game, they could just look at the box score online or in their local newspaper and then move on to the next day, whether he played well, didn't play well, no discussion about it. And then, just go on to play basketball. But that's not how it works. You're an entertainer. You're playing a sport. People are going to debate about you because that's part of the fun of being a sports fan is debate, arguing, creating narratives. That's why people are fans. They're not fans just to say, Kevin Durant had 25 points tonight. I really enjoyed that basketball game. I'm looking forward to the next basketball game tomorrow. Like people aren't robots. So no. I don't know, what he is expecting is not realistic or good for him or the league.
He's playing in the wrong era then. He should have played in the 50s and 60s when that's what you got. Right. And again, the players were making $25,000 a year and worked jobs in the summer to support themselves. Players today are making, 45, 50 million a year. And God bless them. I'm all for it. They're creating a ton of money. They deserve every penny they get. He just, at times, I think he just needs to get off social media, but he really seems to be addicted to it. Not just social media, but just all media. Like maybe he should be writing a column for, USA Today or whatever. I'm going old school here, as a media critic. Maybe that's the perfect side job for Kevin Durant, that he criticized all the guys that talk about him. And he generally gets praised, right? I mean, Skip Bayless loves him. I think Shannon pushes back because Shannon, like me, is a LeBron guy. So you got to push back against Durant. And Stephen A. Smith has been pretty complimentary to him. But again, when you get swept by the Celtics and you have 3 really bad games in the first round, and you really haven't done enough in 3 years in Brooklyn, you're going to be questioned. And you're going to be questioned, why did you leave Golden State? Oh, and by the way, you're going to be questioned, you went to Golden State, you got airdropped into a winning situation. So were those 2 titles real? I mean, this is what happens when you're a megastar like Kevin Durant. So it's just unfortunate he's so thin-skinned.
Yeah, and he's never gotten over and never will get over the fact that he was never put over LeBron in the eyes of most people. Obviously, we know Skip and some people, put him over, but for the most part, the consensus was
only Skip. I think it's only Skip.
He never surpassed LeBron, and I think that has really bothered him. And will continue to bother him. I mean, eventually maybe he'll get over it. I don't know, but I think that has always been something that's really stuck in his craw. He loves social media. He loves basketball, but he hates the media trappings about it. No wonder he likes Kyrie Irving so much, because Kyrie Irving's also miserable.
Perfect together. And Adam Silver talked about that though a couple of years ago. He says, I've got young multimillionaires that are so unhappy. Like, what's the issue? So
you know what? The guys playing in the finals right now, none of them seem particularly unhappy. Steph Curry he's a front runner, and we think he can be a little petulant sometimes, but I think he loves the trappings of being an NBA star.
Oh, yeah.
And Jason Tatum certainly does. I think that, these guys all seem happy to be here. Giannis, geez, I mean, he was selling trinkets on the street in Athens, not all that long ago. So
and Draymond's a little different, but Draymond also knows how to push back, because Draymond can verbalize better than just about any player. That's why he's going to be sensational when he retires, when he works for TNT, whether it's with Barkley and Shaq or he replaces Barkley. I hope Barkley never leaves. He's the best. But Draymond at least can verbalize what he's talking about, and I respect that. And I think Draymond also can get into a debate a little bit more than Durant, who just gets kind of like, you don't know anything, so I'm not even going to dignify having a debate with you.
Right. I think that's exactly what he is. That's how he views it, is, I know more than you, and it's not worth discussing, which is not really, it's a very narrow-minded way to go through life. Sap, last thing I want to talk about is the potential sale of the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that did not make the playoffs this year. And a team that I was, following pretty closely when I was living out in Oregon for college and continue to follow. They're my second favorite NBA team. They're my favorite Western Conference team. But a couple of years ago, when Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, died, the team, as well as the Seattle Seahawks, which he also owned, went into a trust that's managed by his sister, Jody. Just recently, news came out that the way the trust is structured is she's expected to have to sell those teams and then take the proceeds and donate them to charity, something along those lines. So now speculation has come out as to when the Blazers and the Seahawks will be sold and who the potential buyer is. Well, one party has stepped up and put in an offer for the Blazers, though the team continues to say they're not for sale yet. They're for sale. It's Phil Knight, the co-founder of Nike, and the father of Oregon athletics. We call him Uncle Phil. And he put in him along with one of the Dodgers co-owners, put in a $2 billion offer to buy the Blazers. That's slightly below what Forbes ranked the Blazers value at. I think they ranked them at 2.06 billion. So perhaps the Blazers saying they're not for sale is a tactic to try to get a little bit more money out of Phil Knight. We'll see. But I think Sap, knowing what I know about him and Portland, I think he would be a great owner for the team. Obviously, the Nike connection is huge. And in addition to that, the team should absolutely stay in Portland. There should be no talk about them relocating.
Yeah, Portland has a great fan base, right? I mean, support that team. And Phil Knight is a guy who's, had his hands in the NBA for 40 years as the founder of Nike and all the great work he's done, charitable work. And as you said, it's a great way that the Oregon Ducks call him Uncle Phil, because he basically underwrites most of that athletic program.
Wow.
And that's why
most of the school. It's not even the athletic program.
School, yeah.
They have 3 libraries named after him, Sap. I'm not even joking.
Why not, right? The University of Phil Knight.
Right.
But I think the interesting part about this is it'd be good to keep it local too, because he's, up there in Oregon, and then you bring in whatever cachet you have from the part owner of the Dodgers. And it would make sense that Phil Knight would be the right guy. I just wonder if there's going to be any conflict of interest there because of Nike. I don't think so, but I'm trying to process that because Nike's such a huge brand, and how many players in the NBA.
Yeah, I don't know what his day-to-day is with Nike anymore. That's,
right.
I guess that would be the loophole. Obviously, if Phil Knight wants something done at Nike, it's getting done at Nike. He has that sway. But I don't know that he's an older guy now. I don't know that he might have an emeritus title there, but I don't know how involved he is with them, on a day-to-day basis. But, it's a fair point to raise. But, I think ultimately the NBA wants owners that they think they can trust and are not going to say something or do something crazy. They don't want to, have another Donald Sterling ever on their hands. And they want an owner who ideally has local ties to the team, which Phil Knight does. So he checks off those boxes. I think that is the scenario the NBA would prefer, is an owner that they can trust to be, a good soldier and, follow the rules of the league, and also an owner that will, keep the team in the market they are and be a good partner in that respect. So I think he checks off those boxes as what Adam Silver and the rest of the owners would want. But, the job of the trust is obviously to maximize the dollars. And if the bid for the Blazers is under market value, that does give the opportunity for, another party to swoop in and say, okay, we'll offer you 2.5. And, then it's a different situation that the NBA has to weigh.
Right. And I think there's another ownership group that probably be interested in the Portland Trail Blazers. That would be Fenway Sports Group, which owns the Red Sox, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Liverpool of the British Soccer
Premier League.
Premier League. I sound like an American.
And then a racing team, right?
That. Yeah, I mean, it's worth $8-9 billion, and LeBron James owns 2% of Fenway Sports Group, so he would have to divest himself of that if Fenway Sports Group put a bid in for the Portland Trail Blazers. I also think that at some point there's going to be expansion in the NBA, maybe 2 more teams, so you'd have 32. I'm thinking that Seattle would be a place to go. Although at that point, does the new owner of Portland try to keep a team out of Seattle? Not that they're, that close to each other. I think both cities could support teams, but it kind of has a little bit of a feel of a Northwest market of Portland on its own. So Seattle, though, would be a potential team in terms of expansion. And I would think at some point Vegas is going to get a team, right? I mean, I just
well,
can't
they
see
have
how that's not going to happen.
they have a WNBA team now too,
Right.
so the league has already, and they do their summer leagues there. So they already have an established foothold in Vegas. So yeah, I agree. Those are the two most likely markets without a doubt. Sap, as far as LeBron goes, because we just saw the news yesterday that he's, an active billionaire, which right now, good for him. That's amazing accomplishment while he's an active player to be a billionaire. That's something that would have been unfathomable to, prior generations of basketball players. We know he wants to own a team. I've talked before about how I think the Blazers are a great fit. I could see absolutely where either Fenway buys it, he divests from Fenway and then buys back in after he retires. No problem there.
Sure.
Or I'm sure he has an excellent relationship with Phil Knight because he's been with Nike since he was 18 years old.
Right.
So if Phil Knight buys a team, I would bet you Phil Knight would have absolutely no problem selling LeBron some shares of the team after LeBron retires. So either one of those scenarios, I think would still lead me to believe that is a very likely landing spot of LeBron owning a team. Perhaps he would want to own more of a team, though. If he buys back into Fenway Sports Group or take some shares from Phil Knight, he wouldn't be the majority owner of a team. I don't know how much of a team he cares about owning or wants to own because, that's sort of specific.
Yeah, and then the money that would be needed, right? Because we're talking about a team that's worth $2 billion, and Portland's kind of a middle of the road team. I mean, if the Lakers ever became available, which they won't, because why would Jeannie Buss want to sell the LA Lakers, who gross about $600 million a year? Like, I could run the LA Lakers and turn a profit, and I'm a complete boob. So we'll see what LeBron wants to do at some point going forward. And we talk about this with like Tom Brady would be interested in buying a team. But again, the amount of money that you need to be the majority owner is pretty astronomical.
Yeah, none of the players will own enough, have enough money to buy it outright.
I mean, and a basketball team's more likely than a football team when you're talking about the football teams go for, $4 or $5 billion. I think the Denver Broncos are up for sale, and we're talking close to $5 billion for the Broncos, let alone the Cowboys and Patriots and Packers, who will never be for sale because they're owned by, the shareholders. But I think that it would be interesting to see Portland. I think that makes a lot of sense, Jed. I wasn't even thinking of that. I think you make a really good point that, say, Phil Knight buys it, and then once LeBron retires, maybe he sells them 5%, 10%, which would be, $100 to $200 million. And it wouldn't even have to involve much cash because LeBron's still going to be on Nike's payroll even after he retires. Not at the same level of Michael Jordan, who makes $175 million a year from Nike. Just for branding,
at least,
just incredible. Yeah, at least. And that's why when people say, which American athlete was the most influential when it came to business and growth of the sport, it's Michael Jordan, and then go debate everybody else. He's in another league from everyone else. He's still the most popular athlete in this country, if not the world, and he hasn't laced up sneakers for nearly 20 years. I mean, that's real power, and that's what Michael Jordan brings. So, yeah, maybe LeBron would be that guy in Portland. And again, it wouldn't have to necessarily be a big cash transaction because he's still making money with Nike. So that does make a lot of sense. Is LeBron going to be a hands-on owner once he eventually owns a team? Is he going to be, a guy who's making decisions? We know that Alex Rodriguez bought into the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I don't think that, he's involved in day-to-day operations. But LeBron,
I would hope not as a Timberwolves.
No, I would hope not. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was sitting courtside for the Celtics Heat game 7.
He
right?
fell asleep at that game too. He falls asleep at every game he goes to.
He's also a bad luck charm, Jet. He was there for game 5 and game 7 in Miami, and the Heat lost both of those games. And last year, apparently he's a Green Bay Packers fan, which, welcome aboard. But he was in Green Bay for the divisional round matchup against the 49ers back in January. And as soon as I saw Alex Rodriguez there all dressed up in, the Packers ski cap and the Packers jacket, I'm like, they're going to lose. And they did. He's bad luck charm.
I'm telling you, though, he falls asleep at every game I've seen him at. He falls asleep.
Well, he's old. I almost did the same thing last night. for the Celtics
Well,
game. But I stuck
I'm glad
with
you
it.
stayed up.
No,
Yeah.
I'm a green teamer now, Jet. You know that.
That's great. I'm glad that you're a green teamer. But that's gonna do it here for us, Sap, at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to full press coverage. Sap, you and I will be covering all these games, reacting to all the finals games. Nice and spread out. Next game's on Sunday, so we'll have plenty of time in between games to break everything down, all the action that happened, and the NBA will obviously provide us with news outside of the finals, because we know that Kevin Durant is watching everything that's said and done, so he's likely to say something else. We didn't even talk about Kyrie Irving getting on a fight on his Twitch channel while playing video games, saying Kobe Bryant's the greatest player of all time. He doesn't care about what anybody else says. We can talk about that another day too. So endless content for us. Make sure you check out our social medias at JohnSapp25, at Jet Stryer, and you can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sapp. Celtics up 1-0 after game 1 of the NBA Finals. Game 2 on Sunday evening. See you then, everybody. Bye.